Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Katy Huff with Katy Huff Ministries, and I am so thrilled that you are listening to Setting Yourself Free, a podcast where we are encouraging people to be, do, and have all that God created you to be, and set yourself free from whatever's holding you back. And I have the unbelievable pleasure and blessing to have one of my dear friends, Mr. Mike Bishop out of Oregon, who is here to share with you who he is and how it came to be and what he is setting himself free from. So Mike, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being a part of this. I know that you have quite the story to share. And not only have you set yourself free, but you are a definite overcomer and a huge, just champion in everything that you've done. And I just want to applaud all of your successes before we even start talking, and you can share who you are and where you were and where you're going. How's that sound?
That sounds awesome, Katy. Thank you. It's certainly an honor to be on with you, seeing your journey as an entrepreneur, as a professional, as a woman of God, and really somebody who's looking to make a huge impact on the world. And to see that actually come true has been a thrill. It's my honor to be here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Well, there's a few ways that I feel like I'm free. Financially, it's been fun to set myself up. But when I was really thinking about what you're asking, I knew I had to go to the fact that I've been sober now for 11 years, and I haven't done the math, but it'll be 12 in January. It's exciting. And it really comes at a kind of an important time for me as well. One of my running buddies, actually my best friend, a person I consider to be a brother. We were on the same path. We met sophomore year in college, between sophomore and junior year, hung out. He'd come to Portland and hang out with me downtown, and we'd go party at the bars, and I'd go down there and hang out with him at the fraternity and party at the fraternity and the bars and whatever. And, sharing roommates and being roommates and sharing roommates and being in bands and doing different fun stuff over the years. But for me, I got to a point in my life where alcohol was really costing me more than it was worth. It's one thing to have fun. It's another thing to have problems from having fun.
Right.
And one phrase I've heard when somebody asks themselves if they're a problem drinker is, do you have problems from drinking? And it's really something to kind of consider. If it's relationship problems, if it's financial problems, if it's legal problems, that would indicate that perhaps there's a problem, right? If you didn't drink, would these problems even exist? Right. So, yeah. So that's just something that for me, it got to a point where, and I think where I've gained freedom. One is I don't have to worry about planning too much when I go out. I simply don't drink, and I don't have to worry about getting a ride home, taking an Uber, how I'm going to get places, things like that. It's very easy. It's freedom from that.
Amen.
It helps me financially. When you stop to think, dinner out, it might be, $50, $75 with me and my wife, add some drinks, and it can easily be, 125, 150, whatever. I don't know, because it's been so long since and she doesn't drink much. I mean, she might have a drink once a month or whatever. But so those are the things that, have kind of created freedom in my life, a little less worry, a lot less stress, a lot less things to kind of have to consider just by making one decision. And the fun part about making a decision, when you only have to make it once, you don't have to make it ever again.
Nice.
And, when I really found that day of decision, that I just said, okay, enough's enough. And I also knew that I had to actively engage in a program of recovery. Because there's nothing that we've done in our lives over and over and over that becomes a habit, that becomes a routine, that becomes ritual for us. Come home from work, have a drink.
Right.
Go out with friends, have a drink.
Right.
You're out of the concert. You got to get started. Have a drink. Right. That becomes a ritual, something we're so used to. And frankly, I don't think anybody, and maybe there are a few exceptions, but for the majority of people, you cannot change that habit like that.
Right.
You need to create a different habit. You need to create a different way of thinking, because your mind and your body's been so trained for so long that you can't change that training like that. You can make a decision, I'm going to, but then you have to get involved with different rituals, different ways of thinking, different habits to fill that in with a new way of being.
Right.
And that creates the freedom as well. And so, some people say that AA becomes people's addiction. And certainly there are people that go every day and things like that. And I'm like, well, no one ever got a DUI at AA.
At least you sure hope not, right? Because something's wrong if they are.
Well, and there are certainly people that, are really teetering and will drink and AA, they're struggling. And, and I don't discount that.
No.
No one dies from cirrhosis of the liver because they're going to AA instead of drinking.
Right.
And so when you start, or whatever it is, whether that's, counseling, whatever your system of recovery is, and that's true, I think, in any sort of addiction or any sort of bad relationship or something, we have to be able to change how we think and change our philosophies and our physiology in many cases. And you've got to have a system of recovery in order to do that. So that's
and absolutely, you want to create a community and have an accountability partner, because there's tough times. I mean, we have accountability partners in our business life. So why would we not want to have it in our recovery and health life? And obviously, God didn't create us to have to go through things alone. And thank God we have Him, as that we can do all things through Christ who gives us strength. But also, just having a band of brothers and sisters that are gonna, be there and pull you up. So how would you say this all came about? So, like, can you share with people the sequence of events where it was like all of a sudden it's like, okay, I've had enough, time out, we're changing ways?
Sure. Well, one of the phrase we like to use is called the nudge from the judge.
There you go.
When I try to say that a 0.09 wasn't that bad, but it's still over 0.8, which was the legal limit.
Right.
And having gone through that really obviously was a wake-up call. Certainly the bigger picture, the what if, what if I kept doing that? What if I kept pressing? What if I kept nudging myself over the limit and, figuring it out for so long. And then all of a sudden, one time I don't.
Right.
That was certainly scaring and, sobering.
Yeah. No pun intended.
Right. And so then, and then, just looking back, and then, so of course, when you go through diversion, you have to go through some counseling, and you have to go, the mandatory AA is one part of it. If you want to make that, if you don't, they have other things, but that's an easy way to go. And then the counseling in general, group counseling, one-on-one stuff. And then, so evaluating that stuff and answering the questionnaires and going through that, I really realized that, I wasn't living my best life, and I wasn't living the life that would make my wife happy. When I would, go to a meeting and then stay out and then stay out and then stay, it's 1 o'clock and she still can't sleep well because she doesn't know exactly when I'm coming home or what state I'm going to be in when I do. That was something that really made me aware. And then we just had our first child. I guess, or no, we'd had all three by that point. Because the oldest is going to be 25. So then teenagers, 8, 10, 13 or so. Anyway, I really considered what it would be like to have them see their dad be sober versus have them see their dad drink from time to time or, drink regularly. And what kind of impact that could have on their lives to see that I'm not I don't rail against alcohol necessarily. It's not that I don't, they're never going to see anybody drink ever in their life.
Right.
But, and see their mom have a healthy relationship with alcohol. And so if they can see somebody and I'd say I can embarrass myself without alcohol, I can say inappropriate things without alcohol. I can forget what I do sometimes without alcohol, but I don't wake up with a hangover, luckily, without alcohol.
And you're not even a woman. I would blame it on hormones at my age. It's like, I don't remember anything, but that's another subject for another day.
Yeah. So having them, experience, never having, one time I remember I had a couple drinks. I had a drink in my favorite bar, and I pour the single in a tall glass, and the little extra, right? And feeling just a slight buzz and got a call from my wife. Hey, I can't pick up the kids from dance. Can you go get them?
Mm.
Okay. Yes. I mean, it's half a mile from our house. I can do that. But, that was a reminder to me that
Mm.
you need to be available 24/7. And if you're not, because of alcohol, that was something I didn't want to do. So freedom came in that I didn't have to worry about whether I could be there for my kids, or I didn't create a poor example of a relationship with alcohol for my kids,
Yeah.
right? Ultimately, they're going to have to figure it out themselves.
Right.
They're going to be in college, they're going to drink alcohol, they're going to smoke weed, they're going to do the things that kids do. But if they can know that there is a path of sobriety that can be fun and normal, that what an example that I can
Mhm.
provide for them. And that has definitely been a freedom of conscience, if you
Right.
will.
Wow.
So,
Something to greatly be applauded for, that it wasn't just about me. It was about what your kids obviously were seeing or could see, and you wanted to be a great role model for them, which is very much a huge compliment to who you are. And that, it wasn't just about you and having a good time out, but was looking to provide a great example to your beautiful girls, and they've done very well. And so, I always say that God knows the beginning from the end. He knows what we're going to do before we even do it. He gives us free will. And in those moments, I always have thought, thank God in this particular situation. And I don't know if you have a particular situation where you knew that God was the impetus, or he never left you or forsake you, that he was there in that moment. Do you have any kind of an example in regards to that?
well, I
Where you
mean,
just felt the hand or the guidance, or some people would call it intuition. I call it the Holy Spirit, where you
sure.
have that gut check where it's just like, okay, I know he has his hand on me.
Yeah, I don't know, honestly, Katie, if there was a moment, but I do know that walking to AA
Mm.
and prescribing the going through the steps and being a part of that culture, the buddy system, if you will, like you said,
Yeah,
was much easier because I had a belief in God,
yeah,
right? I do believe there's a higher power.
yeah.
And, they talk a lot about it in AA. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I want to kind of segue and even go off script just a little bit, so to
Sure,
speak.
absolutely.
Script,
Yeah.
but
This is your
um,
story. You share it.
well, so first off, that AA subscribes to a belief in a higher power. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be the classic Christian God or a Muslim God or any other God. Just believe that you're not God.
Amen.
That's kind of the
Amen.
thing. It's like, whatever it is, you ain't it. As long as
Yeah.
you're not it and you're not relying on your own self as your own higher power, you're going to be in a good place, and allows you to give stuff up to the universe, to the world, to God, give stuff up to a higher power. It's a big part of it. I have seen people walk into AA, my best friend, who is agnostic, who doesn't believe that, his religion is an opiate for the masses, and this is just a way to keep people sheep and all this other BS that I, can't get my head around.
Right.
Um, but that's a big reason why he would not get sober
Mm.
and died from alcohol, alcohol assisted suicide. It
Wow.
literally passed a month ago. We were at the executive banquet when I got the call that, and he was the one that got me into our business. I mean, it was just crazy. And yet, it was one of those, you never know when, but there was a bad idea that it was going to happen, just because he'd been so sick for so long and
Right.
wouldn't stop.
Right.
And I believe a lot of that is because he wouldn't believe in a higher power,
Right.
as much as I tried. And then I think, well, maybe he just really didn't want to stop. And so he used that as kind of an excuse or whatever, because there's um, avenues for recovery that are non-religious, non-God based.
Right.
And I'm sure they work for some people. Um, I found out just this last week when I went to an AA meeting that there are AA meetings for agnostics, which was like, I had no idea that was possible. And a twinge of guilt, frankly, went through that. Maybe if I had looked harder and asked more questions, maybe I would have found that. Maybe he would have found it too. And, I had another friend who's just an acquaintance came to meeting, and it happened to be a God meeting. We were talking about God, and he was like, I don't believe in it. And so now he's divorced.
Mm.
Well,
Mm.
that's how non-God works.
Right.
Because if you don't have a source, if you don't have a light to walk towards, you'll be, blinded in the darkness, and you won't know where to go. And usually that isn't a good thing.
No.
We end up just relying on ourselves. We end up being selfish. We end up being, hedonistic, like Sean was. We end up doing a lot of things that frankly don't really serve us in the long run, because all we're thinking about is right here. We're
Right.
not thinking about the connection and the power and living up to someone who loves you no matter what.
Unconditionally.
Their belief, exactly, to their belief of you, for you.
Yes.
Right? If you live in God's light and God's love, the world is your opportunity, and you're doing things for the right reasons.
Well, and that's the beauty of who he is. He loves us unconditionally. He knows we're going to fall, but he's going to be there to pick us up. He forgives us. I mean, we are harder on ourselves than he is on us. He's like, he knows what's the beginning from the end, and he gives us free choice, which can be a blessing and a curse, depending on what choices you make. And hopefully you don't ever continue. Well, sometimes you have to get beyond yourself, and you have to be down in the, on your knees, and like I was, and surrendered and said, okay, my picker's broke. I'm making bad decisions, and I'm going to trust that your plan for me is bigger and better than mine is, because mine isn't getting me where I want to go. So you take the wheel, Jesus, is what my prayer was. And so sometimes you just have to realize that there's so much bigger and better. I always say to people, we settle for the frosting when God wants us to have the whole cake. He wants us to have everything. And we get in the way sometimes of our own self because of the decisions that we make. But he wants us to have everything. Everything. And your friend, it's really sad to stand by and watch someone that you love that could have had a different path had he been willing to possibly, say, I can't do this by myself.
Yes.
And because that's where it starts, is just saying, I need help. Right. But if you don't think you need help, then that's a sad story, obviously, in a sad situation. But, I think I shared with you when we were talking about your friend, is that I, again, want to remind you and whoever's listening that in the Bible, which is my God is Jesus Christ. He's my Lord and Savior. I'm a Christian woman. And in this Bible that I proclaim it to be the best personal development book you'd ever want. And us being in a business of personal development is like, it's full of truth bombs. And this is when we lose someone that we love so much. And it's just like such a sudden death. It's like the righteous. This is Isaiah 57, 1 and 2. And it says, the righteous man perishes at the hand of evil, and no one takes it to heart. Faithful and devout men are taken away, while no one understands that the righteous person is taken away to be spared from disaster and evil. He enters into peace through death. They rest in their beds, each one who walked uprightly, following God's will, living with integrity. So I tell you that because it's like the vision for me is that, again, we don't know the beginning and from the end. And I can only hope and pray that, God doesn't take us home, but he gives us free choice. And when things like that happen, he's there in my vision. I'm a visual person. So as I'm standing I'm going to the pearly gates, and he's there with his arms wide open and saying, welcome home, you're set free. And that's what I love about the opportunity to share with people that we're set free. So
I think God might say thank you when you come to town for what you've done here on earth.
Yeah. And he would say, well done, good and faithful son, or well done, good and faithful daughter. And by all means, I'm a believer that obviously I'll be dancing in heaven on the golden streets with him and my family that's gone before me. And we'll be saying, my husband, who's a pastor, as you know, he'll say,
I'll be breakdancing.
Yes, you will. You are the breakdancing king. And the best part is that it's like they'll be saying, if someone said, do you want to come back to earth? They'd say, no, but heck no, because they're set free. So it's a beautiful thing. So if you were to run into someone who you saw, or how would you give them advice or consultation on where do they start to set themselves free, and what advice would you give to someone?
Yeah, that's a great question. Even a gal from high school reached out to me on Facebook because they'd seen some of my posts, and her son got a DUI and is dealing with it, and asked me to reach out, and I did. And it was just heartbreaking. Like, no, I'm good. no, I'm just gonna have to take. I don't have to go to AA. I just go through the counseling, and I'm fine. I'll quit on my own. I'll handle it. I got it. It's like, dude, you're not gonna. It's just so. At the same time, I know there are people that do want to, and if you don't mind, I'll speak specifically to alcohol,
Yes,
or any sort of addiction, I guess. Although there's so many of them, really.
there is.
That maybe I should say specifically with alcohol. Um, there are people who are living their best life with freedom. I mean, it's freedom of conscience. You don't have to worry about getting drunk and saying something mean to somebody that they take to heart and hurts your relationship with them, perhaps forever. People that are very close. I mean, his daughter does not want to come to the funeral.
Oh no.
His only child.
Wow.
And I don't know if I could have told him that ahead of time, right? Like, they were estranged for about a year. They did start talking again, thank God. But it's really hard when somebody's in their addiction and doesn't want to change to make it available, other than to say, here's what the light at the end of the tunnel could look like, and here's what the other end of the tunnel could look like. But if you are a person that has decided, I do have problems with alcohol. I remember going to a counselor and saying, I think I can manage it. He said, why do you think you need to manage it? Why is it something you need to manage? I was like, great question. That's why you're the counselor. It's a good question.
Yeah, it is.
Right. And if you could release your need to manage that anymore, make a decision one time, prescribe to a system that changes the system you're in, and put yourself in a position to where you can have a short memory, because you can be honest with people. You don't have to lie about your drinking anymore. You don't have to hide it from people you care about. You don't have to hide who you are, because you can be your true, authentic self.
Right.
And, and if God's part of your life, which, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm guessing is.
Yeah. Right? Hopefully. If not, hopefully they'll get to know him.
That's right. I mean, that's the point, right? And so if you want to live God's best life, it doesn't mean that there aren't people that can't drink normally. And that's a real thing for people sometimes to get a hold of, is like, I see people drinking normally and I think I can drink normally. But if you're having problems on a regular basis, or even from time to time, there's a chance that you're an alcoholic, and that's okay, because it's probably the biggest disease out there.
Yeah.
There's probably more alcoholics than anything else. And all I can speak to, not having done a lot of other programs, is AA as a system of recovery absolutely 100% works for people that want it to work, because it's worked too many times for me to say it doesn't.
Right.
Billions, I would guess, even potentially billions of people in the 90 years of AA have gotten sober through that system of recovery.
Praise God.
So, yeah, if there's a way to do it and you want to do it, that's one way. Find your way. And if you know somebody that's struggling, be a support for them in that, support their sobriety. But you might want to ask yourself if you're supporting their alcoholism. Right. Because if they're continually hurting themselves and continually hurting you because of the alcoholism, that is something you want to be really clear about, and make sure that they understand what the effects their behavior is having on the people they love and the people around them. So that's what I would say, is there is freedom available. And if it's a matter of, changing your behavior, there are ways to do that can create even more freedom than you dreamed of, and a peace that can come over your heart, and that can bring you closer to God as well.
Amen. So you definitely are a proponent of what was and what can be. And here you are on the other side, living such a great life of freedom.
Day to day.
One day at a time.
Every decision. I'm one decision away from going back to that life.
Yeah. And I always say to people, it's 1 day at a time, and then it can be 1 hour at a time. It can go to 1 minute at a time.
Yep.
But you get an opportunity to make the right choice, and also, speak life into people. Versus death. And hopefully we get the opportunity to speak life into people on a regular basis and feed them. Yeah, that's the whole intention, right? So I am just so grateful and thankful that you are willing to share, and your success and your overcoming and all that you have been able to do. And God is saying, well done, good and faithful son. And he's got his hand on you, and his plan for you and your beautiful wife and family is perfect and beyond your wildest dreams, because yeah.
She just walked in the door. Dog's going crazy. I'm
Who
going to bring
is?
her on real quick.
Let me
This will
see.
be one of
Dr.
your
Laura.
future guests.
Hi, Dr. Laura. How are you, honey? For all of you that don't know this beautiful woman, she is a chiropractor out in Oregon. And believe me, she is one of the best. She's taking care of me on trips and will do it wherever we're at. And so she is the bomb. And I'm going to have her on this podcast soon, is what I'm planting a seed and saying. She has a lot to share about getting set free and about going and living a life of joy. And so stay tuned, because she'll be here.
Love you.
Thanks, Katy.
Love you, honey. Well, here I want to just say thank you, Mr. Mike, for sharing your story. And I just want people to follow us. Now they need to know to follow us to go to Katy Huff Ministries on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Rumble, you name it. We're on everything. And this story needs to be heard, obviously, so we can help other people be set free. And so yes.
Get the book Unmasked.
Yes. Thank you, Mike. My #1 best-selling book, Unmasked, The Power of Courage and Vulnerability. And that's what we're doing. We have the courage right now to be vulnerable, to share with you, to set you free, so you will have no more settling, shame, or self-betrayal. And that is Unmasked on Amazon. Thank you, Mike, for that. I appreciate that. And so I just look forward to you all following us, and go to YouTube and push subscribe, so you'll be able to hear other wonderful testimonies. And definitely, push that button, subscribe, and then pull out Mr. Mike Bishop from Oregon. So God bless you. You are a overcomer. You are an example of being set free. And I just am so grateful, and thank you for coming on and being such a dear friend to me.
Thank you, Katy.
You are welcome. God bless you.